Hello and welcome to episode 149 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I'm your host, Devon Dundee. I am joined by Sigmund Judge. We've got a lot of great stuff coming up on the show this week, including a recap of La Maison. But Sigmund, first, you just heard episode 149 is this week. That means next week is a milestone, I'd say. Episode 150. Yeah. Feels like just this time last year we were doing episode 100. I guess that's how math works. But it's pretty awesome. So we're going to do something special next week for episode 150. We've got a couple surprises, but we'd like to get our listeners involved with a Q&A. So if you would, send us an email to magic@macstories.net or send us your question on social media with the hashtag Magic150. Whatever it is you want to ask us about, this is your opportunity to have your question answered on the show, and we would love to hear what you want us to talk about. So help us celebrate episode 150 next week with this Q&A, and it'll be a really fun way to end out the year, and we hope you will do that. Now, Sigmund, I saw some pictures this week from you on social media. Mm-hmm. Look like you've been spending some time in a place that we talked about a few times here on the show. Tell me about your visit to Battersea.
Yeah, I mean, it's not far away from me, so it's a nice, easy journey. But I decided to go to Battersea this weekend to meet up with friend of the show, Roman Lefevre of sequel fame, and discuss our plans for the year ahead, and also get a few tips as well, because I'm kind of looking into trying to learn more about development and code, because it's all just magic to me, to be quite honest with you. And I want to have a better understanding and maybe bring something to Apple TV by the end of 2025. We'll see. But one of the main reasons I went was to see the projection on Battersea Power Station, which didn't happen that day because of the ensuing storms, and everything was shut down. Normally they've got an ice rink open, fairground rides, lots of stuff happening. But on Saturday there wasn't. What I did get to see though was a cool model of Wallace and Gromit, the model used in the Apple short that is being projected on Battersea Power Station. And I popped into the store for the first time in a few months now, actually since Vision Pro launched, and got to see their setup for Apple Vision Pro, which is in its own little alcove. I believe this setup's only in like 3 stores, which I was able to research thanks to Tabletops and Michael Stieber. And that is, I think, in China, in Milton Keynes, which isn't too far away from London, and London Battersea. And I was just blown away because one plan I had for this year was to start doing some video work, and I had a backdrop at home installed that lit up, the whole wall lit up, but there were some issues with it. And after many, many months of waiting for a fix, unfortunately, that fix never came. And so it's being ripped out and taken away by the company that made it, and I'm being refunded, and I'm rethinking how I'm going to set up my YouTube video space for the future. And I got some ideas from this alcove at Apple Battersea. But we talked about televisions many a time on here, and part of the Apple Vision Pro display is a screen hiding behind the main display, and it's longer, anamorphic, and curved. And so I decided to post on social media, hey, this is your reminder that Apple should make a television. Got lots of responses. Great. The thing that I thought was really interesting here was actually just how many people during their Christmas shopping were having an experience with Apple Vision Pro. It was busy, and I think that's a great thing. So lots coming up for myself, both YouTube and a little bit of, hopefully, development coming your way.
That sounds like some exciting things taking place in 2025. I will say, if anyone hasn't seen your post of the display, and especially that big screen at Battersea, definitely check that out because it's hard to put into words, but it's a really cool looking display with the curved edges and everything, and it makes me want that Apple TV set even more. Now, our listeners may have heard a bit out of Roman and Sequel this week, alongside a whole host of other apps, because this week was the MacStories Selects Awards. There were a bunch of great apps and developers that were honored, among them some people that we've spoken to on this very show, and we just wanted to offer our congratulations to them and shout out especially, this year was pretty media heavy in terms of the apps and tools that were selected. That was maybe not necessarily a theme, but just something that popped up several times throughout the awards, which was really cool to see. So we wanted to offer a special shout out to those particular apps that we think our listeners would be especially interested in, because not only are they cool media apps, but now they're MacStories Selects award winners. Let's start with the app of the year. This one, I think a lot of people could have predicted. It's one that's very well deserved and just a story that I found so inspiring this year, and that is Delta by Riley Testett, the Game Boy and Nintendo emulator. I remember it back in the GBA for iOS days. I've been following Riley's work since then. It's come a long way since then. Spent some time at the top of the App Store this year and has really just shaken things up in the best possible way. So a perfect contender for App of the Year. Great selection, and awesome to see Riley win that award this year.
Yeah, very much so. Another developer that I got to talk to earlier this year at WWDC, very briefly, was Sean Hickman, who won Best App Update for Sofa. Really, really happy to see everything that was integrated this year, and I think well deserved. But I want to talk about the reader choice, because not only was this very, very close in the voting stakes, this close race was between two friends of the show, both Roman Lefevre and Marcus Tanaka, who has been on the show before, I think a couple of WWDCs ago now, to talk about Play, as really it was starting to pick up some momentum. Marcus Tanaka's Play picked up the Reader's Choice Award for 2024 and was literally single-digit votes ahead of Sequel. Two fantastic apps. Two apps I use daily. But the same went for Best New Feature.
Yes, Play's Channels Inbox won Best New Feature, and Sequel's Magic Lookup was a runner-up for Best New Feature. It's kind of funny, the synergy, I guess, between the MacStories team and MacStories readers, what they're thinking in terms of the Selects Awards, but everyone's focused on media tracking this year, which is something I love to see. So great to see these apps honored. Congratulations again to everyone. If you haven't yet checked out the full list of MacStories Selects Awards winners this year, it is a very, very strong list of apps, all incredible ones worth checking out. And there's a ton of categories that we didn't cover here that you definitely should check out. We will link that, of course, in the show notes.
Next week on this show, we will, of course, be answering your questions, but we'll be sharing our own highlights of 2024 from an Apple TV perspective. But I've got a funny feeling we'll be talking a fair bit about one particular piece of hardware, and that is Apple Vision Pro. And, well, this week, as with every week, was a very active week for Apple Vision Pro in the news. Lots of amazing apps continuously coming out. But one piece of news that I think could be a game changer if it does come to fruition.
I'm going to go ahead and pardon your pun there, Sigmund, because we're going to be talking about gaming here for a minute on the Apple Vision Pro. Mark Gurman reports that Apple and Sony are collaborating to bring compatibility for PlayStation VR controllers to Apple Vision Pro for gaming and precise input when using the device. This has been a recurring theme since, not even since Apple Vision Pro was released, but since it was announced, this question about VR gaming controllers and whether or not they'd be supported, whether or not they should be supported, which I think the overwhelming majority of people who have weighed in on this think that there should be some option for it. And it sounds like Apple has agreed on that and has been working behind the scenes for some time with Sony to make this happen. Not bringing a first-party controller, but picking one that's pretty popular, seems to get pretty good reaction and reviews from people who've used it, bringing that into the Apple Vision Pro atmosphere, which I think is cool. It's an interesting way to solve this problem. And personally, I really hope this does come true.
Yeah. So the report brought up some interesting facts. Apple Vision Pro apparently sold just 500,000 units so far. Lots of interest, but does that convert? And then the people that have purchased Apple Vision Pro units, their usage is probably lower than Apple expected it to be, which is interesting because I don't think that's how our personal experiences have been. I think we're probably the niche case there, right? So whenever I read that, I am surprised. That said, Sony with their PSVR 2, that extra for the PlayStation 5, I think it cost as much as the PlayStation 5 itself. And whilst the initial launch was quite successful, what happened was Sony stopped recently production in order to clear the backlog of unsold hardware after a positive launch that quickly fell off. Interestingly, controllers are still not sold separately, even though now the PSVR 2 works with PC and there's other use cases for it. Apple, though, I think by integrating with the PSVR 2 controllers, which there's two of, and you have one in each hand, I believe there's motion sensing in there, but most important, there's input triggers and buttons, which we don't have on Apple Vision Pro. I was reading a lot of conjecture about where Apple Vision Pro is right now and how much it needs an input like this. And I couldn't help but think about Apple TV and tvOS and that launch into gaming, right? And there's a term that's used in politics that I hadn't really heard before until this last political cycle, which I think is a term that really should be used everywhere. And that is definition, right? Someone or something being defined quickly. Because once that definition is out there, it's very difficult for a consumer base to look at a product in a different way. And I think that's the problem that Apple TV has with gaming today, in terms of the hardware is capable of, playing a number of games, but early doors, there wasn't any controller input that was traditional for gaming, and the gaming side was defined negatively. It never really recovered. I think if Apple don't move towards something like PlayStation VR controllers being compatible, they're going to lose that timing in terms of having other people define what their platform can be for gaming. Right now, because there's so few people that own and use an Apple Vision Pro day to day, Apple is still in a position of being able to redefine what gaming is on the platform. So I'm really hopeful also that maybe the partnership between Sony and Apple extends to software. There's one kind of reason that I've heard that people have naysayed this is, well, if you think about like the foveated rendering and everything going on the Apple Vision Pro itself, a lot of the resources of the M2 and the special GPU chip just doesn't leave enough room for gaming on this device. Death Stranding for iPad and iOS never came to Apple Vision Pro, probably for that reason. And so I was wondering, if you had controllers connected to Apple Vision Pro, could Apple Vision Pro then set itself into a gaming mode where the resource that would be taken up for foveated rendering and everything else could then be redirected to being able to play these powerful games that are on like MetaQuest and PlayStation VR. And I just kind of wondered what your thoughts were on that.
That's an interesting idea. I mean, if you've got the controllers, you wouldn't be tracking people's hands either. So whatever resources are going into that could be potentially freed up. Like a game mode for Vision Pro. That's an interesting idea. I don't pretend to be an expert on silicon and processors and all that kind of stuff. I'm pretty casual in keeping up with that stuff. It's interesting. But yeah, I mean, if the architecture is set up in a way that they could redirect those resources in that way, I think that's a cool idea and one that could help with the gaming situation on Vision Pro. I hope that it's not going to require new hardware to really, step up into AAA gaming and stuff like that, because I imagine a lot of first-gen buyers are probably going to be sticking with that hardware for some time. I also really like your idea about this being more than just a hardware deal between Apple and Sony, because, I mean, you'd have to work pretty closely together. This is not a typical, like, A, B, X, Y setting up to your iPad. Like, Apple already had the made-for-iPhone controller thing before they got with Sony and Xbox on those controllers. This is a whole different thing in terms of controlling the UI and configuring it and calibrating it. So I really hope that it is an indication of some kind of deeper relationship between Apple and Sony on the Apple Vision Pro, and that we could see some of those games come to the platform in time. But even if that's not the case, there is a cool new way on Apple Vision Pro to experience PlayStation gaming, and you can use it right now. It's an app that was pointed out to me, at least, by Tim Chatton of the Vision Pros podcast. It's called Portal, which is a name you might have heard before in other contexts, but in this context, what it refers to is an app on Apple Vision Pro for streaming games from your PlayStation 5 to Vision Pro, using a regular PlayStation 5 controller to play your games on just a gigantic screen in front of you. I don't personally own a PlayStation 5, so this isn't something I've been able to test, but I know that, Sigmund, you've got a PS5 that you play. So have you had a chance to try this out?
I have. I was playing FIFA or EAFC on my PlayStation, and then I had a screen above me with the actual game going on this past Sunday, and then another screen with all of the latest scores, like just tickers. It was something I was doing before with another piece of software that I needed to route my PlayStation through my iPad and then have my iPad send an NDI signal. So this just makes things a lot simpler. Be interesting to see how long it sticks around and whether PlayStation would be interested in bringing a first-party remote play app to Apple Vision Pro. I think that could be another use case. What is really fun, I'm going to drop a name here. I had the original PlayStation VR that came out for PlayStation 4, but it was a gift. In 2016, I was working on the Believe tour for Justin Bieber. We went to Selfridges and we were all given like a certain amount of money that we could spend in Selfridges, and I picked up a PlayStation VR and an Apple TV. So it's interesting to see how everything kind of moves around and kind of comes back. But yeah, I'll pick up that name now and we'll move on.
Well, that was awesome. I did not know that you worked with him and that he bought you a PlayStation VR. That's really cool.
I mean, his team, right? It wasn't a personal shopping experience with Justin Bieber, but yeah.
Oh, well, I'm still going to keep that image in my head, Sigmund. All right, you mentioned watching the football on your Vision Pro as you were playing the football as well. Let's talk about sports for a minute, because there's been a big update to the Disney Plus app to integrate more tightly with Disney's sports brand, ESPN. Like Hulu before it, ESPN is given a new tile in the Disney Plus app that grants ESPN subscribers access to the service's content, offering a single place to stream the entire bundle. So we talked about this before. Disney Plus added a Hulu tile where if you had an account that was subscribed to both Disney Plus and Hulu, you could watch your Hulu content in Disney Plus and not have to have two apps. Well, now that third streaming app, the ESPN Plus app, is also becoming a tile in Disney Plus. The standalone app is sticking around. If that's how you want to watch your content, that's going to continue to be supported. But for those who are subscribed to the bundle and want the entire experience in one place, you're able to do that now. And for those who aren't subscribed to Hulu or ESPN Plus, but you are subscribed to Disney Plus, those tiles now will give you access to samples of those services' content for free. And Disney's actually being pretty generous with these samples at first. There's some pretty good content in there to check out, including some from FX in that Hulu tab if you're not subscribed. And of course, what they're trying to do is upsell you, right?
Sure.
The first one's always free, Sigmund, as they say. And what they're trying to do is to get you to go ahead and upgrade your account. But again, even if you do that, you can stay within the Disney Plus app, which is cool. Disney has also announced plans to integrate its full-fledged ESPN streaming service into the Disney Plus app next year. So when the original full ESPN app is available for streaming, which is planned for next year, you'll also be able to do that in the Disney Plus app alongside Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus. So all roads lead to the Disney Plus app, Sigmund.
It's interesting because, firstly, I wonder how many Disney diehards will care about having ESPN content within their home screen, right? There's also something else that I picked up this week, which I didn't share with you and I hadn't put in the show notes, but I figured I'd bring up, is that by combining everything, Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN, when it comes to selling that advertising for the ad tier to advertisers, Disney are able to pump up their numbers. And that's either going to be a really good thing for Disney, or it's going to cause issues, because I recently read something about advertisers not being particularly happy with how the Hulu tab was integrated, and the decreased amount of advertising viewership that they were seeing based on the numbers that they were sold. Which I think is really interesting, because of course, if you've got all of this content in this one app, there's more competition, right? And therefore, the adverts that you've agreed with Disney to distribute on Hulu are going to be seen by fewer people unless they click the Hulu content, right? There's separate deals for ESPN, for Hulu, for Disney Plus. So it complicates things. They can pump up the numbers when trying to sell to prospective advertisers, but it will be interesting to see how that affects them both positively and negatively, and how they will change things. And that is one of the negatives of trying to build your own hub for all of the content and networks that you distribute. Yeah, interesting from a strategy perspective.
As a Disney Plus subscriber, I've come around on the idea of having it as a central hub, but I'm also an ad-free tier subscriber, so I'm not even necessarily their ideal customer, and I'm not in the mix in terms of the ads and stuff like that. I'm also not an ESPN Plus subscriber, so I need to check out that tab and see what it actually looks like on my end. And also, I don't think you can remove it. So even though it's not one that I'll be using, it is one that's going to now live there in the Disney Plus app for me. So yeah, it's one of those things that it's partially inspired by convenience for the user, but there's also just a ton of corporate, reasons for doing it, synergy and juicing the numbers and all that. And so it's going to end up being a mixed bag for sure.
And when we think about how the tab system worked for the TV app last year, and when that was introduced, and you had the MOS tab, which couldn't be removed, and people thought that was invasive, right? The ESPN content for people that just aren't interested in sports whatsoever, as far as I can tell, there's no way of being able to remove that.
Right. Yeah, you go to Disney Plus for your Star Wars, but you get an ad for whatever college football game is happening. Yeah, that could be frustrating for sure. Interesting times at Disney. and we'll continue to keep an eye on what they're doing there.
Now, let's talk about another app, and that's Prime Video. Because a few weeks ago, the Apple TV Plus channel arrived in the US on Prime Video. We covered it back then. But since then, it's rolled out to further territories, which meant that I finally got a chance to check out what Apple TV Plus looked like in my territory, the United Kingdom, and what its feature set was like in comparison to the TV app, which of course is also available on Amazon Fire Sticks and everything else. I was quite surprised actually how lacking it was, not from an Apple perspective, but from an Amazon perspective. HDR10 Plus is there, great, but audio restricted to Dolby 5.1 rather than Atmos, which I was really surprised by. And then what I can only imagine as just a misfire here, a lack really of audio tracks and subtitles compared to what you get on Apple TV Plus in the TV app and on other platforms. Of course, you also miss out on enhanced audio, you miss out on family sharing. So there's a fair bit missing here. Offline downloads. It's great that Apple TV Plus is going to be seen by more eyeballs on the Prime Video app, but definitely not the choice to pick, I don't think, for most people.
Yeah, some huge trade-offs for the convenience of that Prime Channels integration. I have to imagine that this is only really going to be worth the trade-off for people who are really deeply invested in that Prime Video ecosystem. I mean, if you've got other channels there, it makes sense to want to have them all together. But otherwise, yeah, I think the TV app is definitely the way to go on whatever platform that you're using. It's available, and you're going to get a better experience there in terms of quality and, as you said, the accessibility options that are available, which just has me scratching my head because that list of available audio tracks on Apple TV Plus is comprehensive, and a lot of work goes into that, and anything to make stuff more available to people I think is better, and when those options are taken away, that's not a good thing. Regardless of how you watch Apple TV Plus, there are a couple of huge releases coming early next year to look forward to that were a part of the CCXP Comic-Con in Brazil this past weekend. Apple dropped the trailers for both Severance Season 2 and The Gorge. You know we have to talk about them. Let's get into it, starting with Severance. Mark Scout leads a team at Lumen Industries whose employees have undergone a severance procedure that surgically divides their memories between their work and personal lives. This daring experiment in work-life balance is called into question as Mark finds himself at the center of an unraveling mystery that will force him to confront the true nature of his work and of himself. In Season 2, Mark and his friends learn the dire consequences of trifling with the severance barrier, leading them further down a path of woe.
What you all did was one of the most painful moments in the history of this company.
What the hell?
But the four of you have become known as the face of severance reform.
Okay, so we're not in trouble?
I don't think so. Milchick said we're famous.
All of us equally, or one of us is like the star?
Now if you feel that you can't go on.
So what the hell did you guys see up there?
It's not our world up there.
And your life is filled with much confusion.
My Audi's wife died a few years ago. Except the woman is Miss Casey.
Well, of course, this is created, written, and executive produced by Dan Erickson, directed and executive produced by the wonderful Ben Stiller, and stars Adam Scott, Britt Lauer, Tramell Tillman, Zach Cherry, Jens Hullock, Michael Chernus, Daikon Luckman, John Turturro, Christopher Walken, Patricia Arquette, and new series regulars Sarah Bock and Olafur Dari Olafsson, alongside some other new faces. Maybe we'll wait until Season 2 begins. But the first thing I've got to say about this trailer is we do not clock out this season, it seems, because the macro data refinement team are not just on the severed floor. And, goats. Lots and lots of goats. They're back, Devon.
They are back, and that was the thing that excited me most about this trailer, because I've been thinking about that storyline ever since it first came up on the show, and it looks like we're going to start getting some payoff there, which is awesome. But really, there is so much to love about this trailer. I mean, it is just packed full. My heart was racing by the end of it, not for excitement for the show, but just the sheer intensity of what's happening in season 2. It's just so exciting. This season looks even weirder and more unsettling than the first, which is of course saying something, but I'm absolutely here for. I have to say, we had a teaser a few weeks ago for season 2 that to me felt like it was beating around the bush of everything that we left off with in season 1 that weren't really super addressing any of those storylines. And I was like, okay, are we going to kind of have a slow ramp up in season 2 and work our way back to the main storyline? But this actual full trailer, I mean, they're jumping right into the middle of it, and they're taking them head on, which I absolutely can't wait to learn more about the goats, about the elevator that goes down, about what's going on with Patricia Arquette, who is still living next door to Mark for some reason. I can't wait to learn more, and that's going to be so exciting, and I absolutely can't wait for it.
What's really interesting to me from this season trailer is how we still don't quite know how much the outie version of each character knows about what's going on the inside. It seems to be drastically different depending on the character, right? Helly R, her outie, seems to really dislike the other severed members of the macro data refinement team. And it's going to be interesting to see how we treat her character through the series. But also, how much does Mark know about the outside? He surely knows about his wife, because everyone on the outside was told by his innie. So I'm really, really excited to see where this season goes when it debuts globally. Friday, January 17th on Apple TV+. One highlight from the CCXP talk was with Dan Erickson, who basically quoted Blink-182 and said, well, work sucks, I know, and that is pretty much the be-all and end-all of it, which gave me a good giggle. Also premiering at CCXP this past weekend was The Gorge from Scott Derrickson and its trailer. This is a feature film that I've been looking forward to, but I hadn't heard much hype from anyone really since we got more details last April, thanks to an interview that GQ did with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Of course, this film follows two highly trained operatives appointed to posts in guard towers on opposite sides of a vast and highly classified gorge, protecting the world from an undisclosed, mysterious evil that lurks within. And when the cataclysmic threat to humanity is revealed to them, they must work together in a test of both their physical and mental strength to keep the secret in the gorge before it's too late.
I have new orders that require me to go dark for at least a year, maybe more. A special assignment in an undisclosed location.
As an elite sniper, are you presently under any private or military contract?
No, there's not a lot of reasons for me right now.
What if I gave you a reason?
There she is. West Tower Observation Post. Your home for the next 365 days. There is no outside communication here.
What's that on the other side?
That is East Tower. Contact with the other side is strictly forbidden.
So what's the mission? To keep people from going in the gorge?
No. You need to stop what's in the gorge from coming out.
What the hell is that?
The gorge is the door to hell. And we're standing guard at the gate.
This film comes from Skydance. It's directed by Scott Derrickson, a prolific director. One of my recent favourites, The Black Phone. It's written by Zach Dean, and it stars Miles Teller, Anya Taylor-Joy, and the great Sigourney Weaver, a sci-fi great in many, many eyes. And I think she's about to be part of another great sci-fi story here, Devon. The trailer blew me away. The visual style, the audio from this made me want to see it in a cinema. We'll get into that in a little bit. But what did you think of the trailer?
I have to be honest, the premise is not super my thing. That military background, that's not normally something that I would watch. But really, one thing they talk about at the CCXP panel, which we'll link in the show notes, is that really this film encompasses a variety of genres. You know, it starts with that military background, but it includes romance, action, survival. There's so much happening here. And the way it all ties together in the trailer, at least, it looks really cohesive and just adrenaline pumping, which, really, really hooked me as well. I think the thing that excites me most about this, especially after seeing the panel, is the two leads, Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy. These are two performers who have proven they can do just about anything, and they're taking on this really unique and compelling premise, and their chemistry on screen and off the screen, it's just so obvious. I think this is going to be a really awesome ride that I can't wait to see. That moment in the trailer when the parachute goes off, my jaw dropped. I was like, oh my gosh, he's going in. Like, oh man, yeah, so good. I absolutely can't wait.
I've got a theory, and that is that what we see in the trailer is just the first act of the film. Mm-hmm. The soundtrack, amazing from what we hear so far from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who have been shortlisted for many, many awards this award season when it comes to their work on Challengers from Luca Guadagnino. This soundtrack is quite interesting because when they talked earlier this year about their process, they talked about the fact that director Scott Derrickson asked them to kind of come up with something a little more haunting, a little more aggressive, and as a big Nine Inch Nails fan, that's what I want to hear from Trent Reznor. So I'm really, really excited to check out this story. Miles Teller, I love to bits. Anya Taylor-Joy, really enjoyed her in Furiosa earlier this year. So yeah, two great talents. And I love the fantastical element. I love the purples and the moody greys. I think it's going to look absolutely beautiful. It's not often when it comes to feature films that we get excited about a feature film around the early part of the year. But Valentine's Day is the date set for The Gorge when it streams on Apple TV+. No news about any theatrical screenings, but you can only hope that there will be some limited previews with everything involved.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in major cities, you have to think that there's going to be some screenings. And this feels like one that you want to see on the big screen for sure. While it may not get that wider theatrical release, if in your area you see this one pop up and tickets are available, I'd say definitely jump on them as soon as you can. So 2 huge releases coming early next year. But of course, there's always more to come on Apple TV+, more dates to add to your calendar, more things for us to cover, and you know we're going to do it. So we've got a few more release dates that we want to share with you, starting with Ava the Owlet. Following this week's holiday special, Ava the Owlet will return for a second season January 24th on Apple TV+. Season 2 takes viewers through a night in the life of Ava, a spunky, enthusiastic owlet who dreams big. This is one that we talked about a little bit when it came out on Apple TV+. It's a family and kids show that seems to be doing pretty well. They've got a special coming and a second season, so if your child or your family is a fan of Ava the Owlet, you have that to look forward to on January 24th.
Very, very cool. Berlin ER. This is the second German language Apple original coming after Where's Wonder, which we highlighted last week on the show. But this is a medical drama series the second medical drama series after Midnight Family, which we highlighted last week. And this one's from Samuel Jefferson and Victor Jakovleski, and it's going to make its global debut on February 26th. It stars Haley Louise Jones and Slavko Popedich. The series follows a young doctor seeking a fresh start who takes over the emergency room in Berlin's toughest, most chaotic hospital, battling staff resistance and a rundown system where she must unite her maverick team to save lives. We'll leave a link to a first look in the show notes, but for the Grey's Anatomy fans, I think there's something here for you. It's going to be really interesting. Alongside that, though, something I'm actually probably more interested in, and it's a show that we've mentioned many, many times across its in production and in development stages, and it's really cool to see how long it takes for some of these series to be developed and then become a actual living, breathing thing. And that is Government Cheese, which arrives on April 16th, starring and executive produced by David Oyelowo. This is a surrealist family comedy which tells the story of a quirky family pursuing lofty and seemingly impossible dreams against all odds. But when Hampton, who's played by David Oyelowo, is released from prison, his long-awaited family reunion doesn't go quite to plan. There are some amazing photos that were shared by Apple this past week for Government Cheese, alongside a very, very short 30-second teaser, which is just in the video limits of Blue Sky at the moment. I saw Ben Stiller kind of complaining about the limits there and having to recut his trailer for Blue Sky last week. But yeah, excited for this one. It looks absolutely fabulous as well.
It does. When you say that there's a 30-second teaser, I think it did exactly what it's meant to do. It made me want more, because it's just this very brief moment in this family's life that it's like heartbreaking and comedic at the same time. And really, I just want to spend some more time with these people. So I'm excited that we have a date now for Government Cheese. We've been looking forward to this one for some time, and we'll get to see it on our screens on April 16th.
From a photography point of view, and the cinematic choices in what we see so far reminded me a lot of Hello Tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So yeah, going to be really interesting to see. In production though, and in fact, I don't actually think this is in production. I think this is a finished documentary that has landed at Apple. And that is Deaf President Now from deaf actor, filmmaker and advocate Niall DeMarco and Academy Award-winning documentarian Davis Guggenheim. This is their upcoming documentary that tells the story of the 1988 protests at the Gallaudet University, the storied university for deaf and hard of hearing students, which led to the installment of the school's first deaf president, Dr. I. King Jordan, known as the civil rights movement most people had never heard about. Well, Devon, that's about to change in a big, big way.
Yeah, well, consider me one of those people who was not aware of this story, and, just the announcement itself is spreading awareness, so I can't wait for this documentary. This sounds like a great story that needs to be heard, and yeah, I'm really happy that this landed at Apple Films, and hopefully we'll get a date for it before long. Well, continuing in production, filming for Season 4 of The Morning Show has wrapped, as revealed by the cast and crew on Instagram. If you're not following Reese's Book Club on Instagram, there's a lot of good Apple TV Plus news there, because again, Reese is working on so many things with the service, so that's where I heard about it. But lots of cast and crew sharing about their experience on Season 4 of The Morning Show, which will be coming to our screens hopefully before too long. Meanwhile, filming for my favorite upcoming Apple original film, The Family Plan 2, is underway in London. The cast shared a behind-the-scenes look at the first day of production, which we'll link in the show notes. Looks like they're already having a great time over there, and I'm sure we'll be having a lot of fun traipsing around Europe as they film the sequel to The Family Plan.
Yeah, the little guy has grown.
Yes.
From the first film, which I thought was really, really cool to see. Also, currently filming around the world for Apple TV Plus are Acapulco's 4th season, Dick Turpin's 2nd season, Down Cemetery Road, the sophomore season of Drops of God, For All Mankind season 5, Hijack season 2, Matchbox, Monarch Legacy of Monsters season 2, Palm Royale season 2, Silo season 3, Slow Horses season 6, and The Last Thing He Told Me season 2, alongside the one that I'm really, really excited for, and I'm hoping we see debut by the end of 2025, and that is Waikaro. So yeah, very, very excited. Also starting soon are Neuromancer, which begins filming later this month, Criminal Record Season 2, which begins shooting on January the 20th. I know this because we've got a good friend working on that production. Alongside Loot Season 3 in January, Margot's Got Money Troubles, and Shrinking Season 3, with February seeing the productions commence for both Brother from Another Mother and the 2nd season of Dark Matter. So lots and lots and lots going on, and some familiar names to anyone that follows the Apple FYC Awards news this past week. Slow Horses, Shrinking, a little bit more. Let's get into it.
So much award news this week. So many nominations and awards to congratulate people on. Let's start with the Critics' Choice Award TV nominations, 12 for Apple Originals, including Disclaimer, Masters of the Air, Slow Horses, Pachinko, Acapulco, Palm Royale, Shrinking, and Bad Sisters. Disclaimer got 4, Sigmund, Best Drama Series, Best Actress for Cate Blanchett, Best Actor for Kevin Kline, I mean, come on, and Best Supporting Actress for Layla George. But, I mean, what a great swath of Apple Originals from the past year to be recognized. And, yeah, really strong showing for Apple at the Critics' Choice nominations, which is very cool to see.
When it comes to critics' organizations, though, quite a few nominations from the various awards happening up and down North America and beyond. The 2024 San Diego Film Critics Society saw a nomination for Elliot Heffernan in the Best Youth Performance category for his performance in Blitz. And in the 2024 Washington Area Film Critics Association Awards, Best Youth Performance nominations were for Isabel Delroy Olsen in Fancy Dance and Elliot Heffernan for his performance in Blitz, who ended up taking home the prize. So many congratulations to him. The big awards news this week, though, beyond what we're going to end on, is the Golden Globes. The big award ceremony that kicks off award season proper at the beginning of January. The nominations and the categories are so out there each time. I honestly find it difficult to take too seriously. But a number of amazing nominations here, starting with Disclaimer. Best Limited Series, Anthology Series or Motion Picture Made for Television. Best Performance by a Female Actor in a Limited Series, Anthology Series or a Motion Picture Made for Television for Cate Blanchett. And a Best Performance by a Male Actor in a Limited Series, Anthology Series or Motion Picture Made for Television for Kevin Kline. Makes a lot of sense to me. The interesting one here for me was the inclusion of Jake Gyllenhaal's performance in Presumed Innocent for Best Performance by a Male Actor. Did not see that coming, but very, very cool. And then we have nominations for both Slow Horses and Shrinking.
Yeah, Slow Horses is up for Best TV Drama. Gary Oldman is up for Best Performance by a Male Actor in a TV Drama. And Jack Lowden is up for Best Supporting Actor in the television category. Shrinking, both Jason Segel and Harrison Ford got nominated. Jason Segel for Best Performance by a Male Actor in a Comedy, and Harrison Ford for Best Male Supporting Actor on Television. Congratulations to all 9 of these nominations and the teams behind them. This is awesome to see, and of course we'll see how the Apple Originals do at the Golden Globes, January 5th on CBS and Paramount+. One last award that we wanted to highlight this week. Shrinking was honored as one of AFI's 10 television programs of the year for 2024. I have to say that seems like a pretty big honor to be bestowed, but well-deserved for sure.
Definitely my comfort watch of this past year. And that comfort watch continues because, well, let's talk about Apple TV releases for this week, Devon. Beginning today with new episodes of Shrinking and Bad Sisters, and the finale of You Would Do It Too. On Friday, we see a new episode of Silo and the penultimate episode of Before, with new releases coming in the kids and family category from Wonder Pets in the City and Ava the Owlet holiday special, Ava's Moonwish, on Apple TV+. In the TV app, free for all this week, is A Charlie Brown Christmas on Saturday and Sunday. And well, with the MLS season being over, I really enjoyed this past weekend's final. It was a rip-roaring success, lots of goals, lots of drama, a really, really fun game where LA ended up coming out on top right at the end. We have some extras, Devon, and a lot of extras related to one Apple original film in particular. But let's step away from that and talk about books. We don't do that often.
Yeah, we don't cover books too often here, but we wanted to make sure everyone knew that alongside what we talked about last week with Apple Music Replay, there's also a feature in Apple Books called Year in Review. You can go back and look at what you've read this year. Apple also released their lists of best books and audiobooks of the year, which included Margot's Got Money Troubles, read by Elle Fanning. So as you're waiting for that series to come to Apple TV Plus, if you want to hear Elle Fanning read it to you, you can go ahead and do that in the Apple Books app as well. You mentioned a bunch of Blitz extras, so many great videos behind the scenes of that film, including recreating war-torn London in 1940, Steve McQueen's and Hans Zimmer's boldest collaboration yet, behind Saoirse Ronan's iconic 1940s look, and behind the scenes of writing the original song Winter Coat. If you enjoyed Blitz and want to learn more about how it all came together, we will link all of those in the show notes, of course. Then for fans of Silo, we've got a video of Rebecca Ferguson diving in Silo 17. Fascinating what they're doing with Silo this season and how they're pulling it all off. That show, the first season behind the scenes was just incredible, but second season, I mean, they're just taking it to a whole other level, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, like a big water tank just in the middle of what would normally be like a set that's constantly changing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what an ordeal to put together for the crew, right, and the riggers. But yeah, whatever it takes to put together a great story. Very, very cool indeed. We also saw the launch of 3 new Apple Music radio stations this week. Apple Musica Uno, Apple Music Club, and Apple Music Chill. Really disappointed not to see a Apple Music French techno channel, but I'm sure there is something in Apple Music itself, because we're about to talk about La Maison and recap its first season with some spoiler talk thrown in as well. So if you've not yet seen the show, please skip this chapter, come back a little bit later. But for everyone that had the opportunity to see, I think arguably the best debut for an Apple original television series this year, well, we're about to dive in. High fashion meets high drama in this behind-the-curtain look at an iconic French haute couture house. When family dynasty behind the house falls into scandal, they must find a way to reinvent themselves or be destroyed by their rivals.
Attending your own funeral is pretty much like the ultimate fashion show.
Qui rend l'âme obscure.
You wonder who will be there in the front row. You wonder who really cares that I'm gone.
Vincent, Victor, Ledoux a family business and you're part of the family.
This Maison is as fragile and precious as the lace it makes. It's hanging by a thread.
What I am is director of La Maison. We won't be able to sell a thing as long as Vincent remains. So the only viable strategy is a clean break, not passing the baton. Paloma Castel.
What?
Yes, she has vision. You'd be artistic director, replacing Vincent.
Has she been told our family favorite is devouring each other?
Diane Rovell is obsessed by Ledoux.
That woman has always wanted to own us. We have to support each other because we are a family.
Team Ledoux or Team Rovell? Well, think it over, Victor. Sometimes dancing with the devil is the only way to survive.
If I betray my own family, I'd want to be chief. Your position, CEO of Rovell. We'll start with the weakest member of the family.
Almost like hunting.
My job isn't to save you, it's to save this Maison. You're all crazy out of your...
Can't be very different for the rest of the family.
It comes with the crown.
Well, Devon, as I've already said, I think this is my favourite debut of an Apple Originals series this year. And when we were talking about the trailers and how we want to watch everything in the original native tongue, with the French accent, I think there's no excuse. If you watch this dubbed, I kind of feel sorry for you because the French language is just so beautiful and has such an attitude behind it as well. This show, quite incredible, Devon.
Yeah, it makes me happy to hear such high praise from you because this was a one that I enjoyed quite a bit as well. It's based on an original idea by Alex Berger, created by showrunners Jose Catacron and Valentin Milleville, directed by Fabrice Gobert and Daniel Grau, starring a bunch of French actors. I apologize for my pronunciation of the names here, but I'm going to try. Lambert Wilson, Amira Kazar, Carol Bouquet, Zita Henro, Pierre Delanchamp, Antoine Renoir, Anne Consigna, Florence Soray-Kai, and Jimin Park. Sigmund, you want to give us a quick plot summary of what happened in season 1?
Absolutely. Well, the series, of course, centres on the chronically dramatic Ledoux family and its prestigious French fashion house as the clan navigates the cutthroat fashion business in an age of social change and social media. You've got creative director Vincent, who's forced out of the company after a video of him making racist comments is leaked by rival house Rovell, where Vincent's brother, Victor, just so happens to be the next in line for CEO. Pearl, Vincent's right hand, brings in young upstart designer Paloma Castel to run the Maison, and Paloma aims to transform Ledoux into a socially conscious company whilst grappling with the house's history and the revelation that Vincent is her long-lost father. At Rovell, Victor assists his mother-in-law Diane and wife Caroline with a hostile takeover. They use deception, sabotage, blackmail, all of that to coerce several members of the family into selling their shares until they gain a majority stake in the house. And the season ends with a coup at Rovell that sees Caroline take over for her mother, Victor put in charge of Ledoux, and Vincent and Paloma scheming to get their house back. But will they succeed? Will Diane claw her company back from her daughter's cruel hands? We don't know, but one thing is for sure. Everyone in this family needs a vacation and some therapy.
Oh, they certainly do, but it makes for very entertaining television, doesn't it, Sigmund?
It does. It really does. I think when we looked at the trailer initially, I likened this to Succession, or at least that's what I was hoping. I think what we got was more of a Succession light. And I know that's a series you've still yet to see. We'll be talking more about that next week. Yes. But do you get the appeal of this type of... I almost, for me, this show I could compare to House of Cards, which was an early Netflix original series. I'd even say some of HBO's better series, like Game of Thrones, in a weird way. You know, there are so many chess pieces at play here, and the first couple of episodes especially, it feels like every 5 minutes you're being introduced to yet another character, and you're thinking, right, are they a pawn? Are they a queen? Are they a bishop? Are they a knight? Where are they on this board?
Yeah, I very much got that feeling from the show, and the main thing I was thinking as I watched this was, okay, I finally have to watch Succession now, because Sigmund was right. This is so appealing. There's an episode that takes place over Christmas where the entire family is kind of not stranded, but they're on this island and the tide's not right for them to leave. So they're all just in this very contained place, and this big bombshell secret comes out that just throws off everyone's plans. They're all kind of scheming behind each other's backs, and it just blows up in all their faces, and they're just all in this library yelling at each other, and as a family trying to work through this horrible situation that they found themselves in. And I thought, okay, I need more of this in my life, because it is so entertaining to see. And like you said, there's so many threads that you have to keep up with, and the playing field is constantly changing. There's characters who you think, okay, I see where they're going, I see what they're going to do. They're going to pull this move, and then this person's going to do this, and this is how it's all going to land. But then something comes in out of the blue. One of these characters does something unexpected and chaotic and just stabs someone in the back in the most horrific way, and it just completely changes the dynamic of the show. From your plot summary, you can see that things change a lot for this family and for this company very rapidly as it goes on, and it's so much fun to watch. I get the feeling this is a bit more mainstream leaning than even a lot of what we see on Apple TV Plus, which I actually give it credit for. I think this is something that a lot of people will enjoy. It's just a really great roller coaster of family drama with a nice touch of fashion thrown in, which I appreciated a lot as well. This became my sort of turn my brain off show. I was watching it for the plot. I was watching it for the beautiful scenery and the dresses. I mean, the fashion is amazing. And, I wasn't thinking too terribly much about taking any lessons away from it or anything like that. It really was just, get the popcorn and see what's going to happen this week on La Maison.
It's really interesting that you say that, because I felt complete the opposite. Right, I felt like this is very much, I sat down, I was like, okay, I did have the popcorn out, very much like you, but I was like, what's going to happen next? Of course, I really appreciated the costuming in this and the scenery and how beautiful some of the decor was in these fashion houses. I got some ideas and just thought, well, this is going to cost way too much money. That said, this was very much, for me, a turn my brain on show. There is so much that maybe isn't explored to the depth that I would have liked, but really brought up some interesting exposition. The democratization of fashion and the kind of consciousness behind fashion, the banning of synthetic materials, that kind of thing. What I thought was really interesting about this show in particular was where it starts and its portrayal of cancel culture, which I think is excellently portrayed here by Lambert Wilson, who plays Vincent, who, is cancelled because of his racial slurs. He himself, as an actor, was actually caught up in cancel culture following a question he asked a journalist about her handling of Roman Polanski. And that was kind of flipped on its head and made into a notion that he was defending rapists and the patriarchy, which saw him lose a fair number of placements in the world of both politics and entertainment. So I thought that was interesting that he was able to bring his personal experiences to this character. I also think the show does a really good job in tackling social media and its ability to destroy someone, and that then creates a supposition that stays with someone no matter if they were found guilty or not, right? And even right at the end of the final episode, in which Vincent is offering 3 times the value of the house that he's gone to visit, there's a shock of, wait, you're Vincent Ledoux. You can see that he is still carrying the burden of that in every interaction. So I found that element interesting. I wouldn't say it's forgiving at all of him. If anything, it's the other way. But I thought that cancel culture was represented in a more three-dimensional way.
I found Vincent's journey interesting this season because he is a character I detested the first few episodes, and you're right about how this does have things to say about our reactions to those situations, because I found it satisfying the way he was ousted out of his house. But seeing him, to me, I think he did change quite a bit throughout the season in the sense that he embraced his role as a father and let go of his own ego. He didn't necessarily make right on the wrongs that he had committed, but in his own way, he gave up some of that and started investing in someone else. And in that way, he did come around for me, at least as someone who, by the end, when he and Paloma are on the same team and you see them moving in the same direction, it's like, okay, this is a team I can start to root for in terms of hoping to see them succeed in the future and getting their house back. But I think it was a long journey for me on Vincent, getting from that video, which is objectively just absolutely awful, around to seeing him as a character that I could kind of root for when he's teamed up with Paloma.
And it's funny because you say episode 3, right? Those first few episodes, they were a long, long time ago. So, we're coming at this from seeing that part of the story and that part of his character, over 2 months ago now. So that may have, swayed how I see things in the overall picture of La Maison and its first season.
The other thing I will say about Vincent is I hope I have his hair when I'm older, because he has fantastic hair. And that actor, I hope that my hair stays as full and as long as I get older. The question I was thinking about with this series, and it's something I've just kind of been contemplating, as last week, we talked about Where's Wanda and Midnight Family. There's a lot of international output from Apple TV Plus happening. And I say that as an American. When I say international, I just mean Apple's based in the U.S. A lot of the productions happen in the U.S., but they're doing more local productions in other countries and in other languages. But because Apple TV Plus is a global service, it's coming out to everyone at the same time. So the question I've been thinking about is, I feel like Apple TV Plus is exploring these new genres, but at the same time, they're doing so with these series that are coming from other countries and coming to us from other languages. So this is a French show with the fashion angle and also the family drama angle. There's so many elements to it that I wonder who the target audience is for this, and who this is connecting with. Of course, we can't know for sure because Apple doesn't release that sort of information. But just thinking about from a strategy perspective, if you're the person who's ordering this show or acquiring it for Apple, who is this intended for, really, do you think?
I think it's intended for the audience that Apple already have for its other products, like Hermes editions of Apple Watches. Fashion is very much in itself not just about culture, but it's about art, right? The new look came out earlier this year, was, I think, a success in storytelling. I'm not sure how that translated in numbers, but I'm hopeful that there'll be a second season. And so I think that there's a prime audience for this. I just haven't seen anyone really talk about the show whilst it was ongoing, and that has me a little bit nervous and a little disappointed. If there was one thing I would say about the first season, it maybe didn't have enough bite compared to what I was really hoping it would be. There are some scandalous and dastardly things that happen here, but I thought some of the scripting and some of the interplay could have been a little bit harsher, and just have a little bit of attitude where you just sniggered along to some of the worst characters in this. Yeah, I think there's definitely an audience for this. Again, I think it's the best Apple original that debuted this year. And that is pretty high praise, especially for a foreign language series, to get that accolade from me. It was beautifully put together. I'm really excited to see where this could land second season and where it goes from there. The very last scene sees Diane Ravel plotting and scheming to get her empire back following cancer treatment. And as evil as she is throughout the season, there comes a point where you turn very much like you do with Vincent, right? And you're rooting for her by the end.
Well, she's another interesting character. We get her backstory at one point, why she is the way she is. Her kind of villain origin story is that her mom was the housekeeper for the Ledoux and got fired, and that I guess Diane vowed at one point to get them back or become a part of that family somehow. And so this is kind of the culmination of that. But yeah, it's complicated because ultimately she's ousted by her own daughter, and you kind of have that sympathy for her with the medical situation that she's in. And so, yeah, that's a whole other layer to it. Not only is she taking over the Ledoux, but she's being taken over. And so, yeah, again, you said it was like a chess game. It's like 4-dimensional chess, though. There's layers to it and so many different moves. But speaking of all these just wild and wacky characters, personalities, I wanted to take a moment to just shout out maybe our favorites from the season, ones that particularly entertained us. Was there a particular character that you really found you connected with?
Connected with? I'm going to answer your question in the sense of who would I want to have my back?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's great.
Right? And I'm going to answer with Pearl, played by the brilliant Amira Kassar. I just think she's brilliant in this. So strong, so powerful, and scheming, but in the best ways. So, yeah.
Yeah, she's like the adult in the room of all these conversations. She's not a part of the family, but she is really kind of the backbone of the company in a lot of ways. And yeah, her journey was really interesting. And if there is a second season, I'm very intrigued to see how she's involved and where she ends up. But yeah, I think if I were picking one to be on my team, that's the one for sure. But I kind of took it as who I'd want to hang out with, or like just who I enjoyed the most this season. And that's a character we haven't talked much about, but it's Maison, played by Antoine Renard. He's a character who thinks of himself as a key player, but he turns out to be a pawn, and that's entertaining in its own way. The way that his whole story plays out, where he thinks he's going to have his own house, be in charge of his own company, and then it turns out that he was just a part of the whole scheme to take over the Ledoux house. He had a line that I thought was just fantastic. He said, "Ugly is in," and which just kind of encompasses his whole fashion vibe and maybe why he wasn't successful at Ledoux. But yeah, he's a character who had a lot of twists and turns this season. And again, another one that if the series gets picked back up, I'd be interested to see where he goes. But yeah, he made me laugh quite a bit.
Well, I think La Maison first season, if you've not yet checked it out and you've rejoined us on this chapter, make sure to check out La Maison in full on Apple TV+. Yeah, absolutely must watch. Talking of must watch, I've got my TV app highlights for this week before our up next picks. Starting today, Queer Eye, Season 9 on Netflix. Have you ever watched Queer Eye or Queer Eye for the Straight Guy?
I haven't seen either iteration, but I hear about it every time it goes around. I can't believe they're already on Season 9.
Yeah, it's crazy. This is a show where people from different backgrounds get help from a number of queer men who have their own different strategies on improving in life. From confidence and self-help to cooking and fashion and self-care and self-maintenance. It's just a show. When it becomes available on Netflix, what I find is I binge every episode. I'm not able to drip feed it to myself. I have to watch it all in one go because they're just beautiful stories and they're great transformations that you see. And sometimes they're actually having to tackle prejudice and talk about their own personal experiences based on other family members within these people's situations that they're trying to help and other challenges. So it's just a really beautiful show. No doubt this will be another season that I just binge in one sitting as I walk around with my iPad. Also, today sees the debut of Venom, The Last Dance, or should I say Venom, The Last... No, let's not do the impression. But yeah, the third Venom film. I've actually really enjoyed these Venom films for what they are. A lot of fun. A film that I wasn't too sure about recommending, that's on Prime Video, because honestly, the trailer looked a little bit silly. Coming tomorrow is Red One. This is like an action Christmas movie with The Rock and other people. J.K. Simmons and Chris Evans, which just looks like a very, very silly movie, almost a spiritual successor to Argyle. So if you liked Argyle, I think you're going to like this. And then on Friday, we see a number of releases, including Conclave, which is a previous pick of mine. Of course, Edward Berger's latest feature, now streaming on Peacock. Joker, Folie à Deux, coming to Max, surprisingly, in a few top 10s of the year, following what was a general panning from the DC comic fans that were probably expecting something a little bit different to a musical. And talking of musicals, Elton John, Never Too Late, the musical documentary brought to us once again by RJ Cutler, who's been prolific this year. And we have Dahomey, another documentary, this time on PVOD, directed by Matty Diop, about the journey of 26 plundered royal treasures from the kingdom of Dahomey, exhibited in France and now being returned to Benin, with the director artistically voicing a new generation's demands. And we also have a Christmas action film of another kind, Carry On Netflix, which we'll mention in a little bit. First, I want to talk about my up next picks, Devon. And I say up next picks, it's one of those weeks where I couldn't just pick one, but they're two very, very different picks. The first is Matti Haapoja, a famed YouTuber who kind of stepped away from YouTube. He was like a camera YouTuber and very, very interesting. But he kind of took a step away at the beginning of this year. He surprisingly came back with an hour-long video, which I've been able to see half of so far, entitled Are Cinema Lenses a Scam?, where he visits the world-famous RE camera and lens maker in Los Angeles. And really, this is like the ultimate nerd video for people interested in the tools that bring so many of the stories that we talk about week in, week out to life. So really, really interesting. I think people will have a blast out of that video on YouTube. But my up next pick this week in the TV app is Blink. It's debuting on Hulu and Disney Plus and comes from National Geographic. And It's a documentary that takes viewers on a journey around the world with Edith LeMay, her husband Sebastian Pelletier, and their 4 kids, Mia, Leo, Colin, and Lauren. Edith and Sebastian, they've organised this trip after learning that 3 of their kids, Mia, Colin, and Lauren, would eventually go blind because of the incurable eye condition retinitis pigmentosa. As they explain in the film, they want their children to have extraordinary visual memories to hold on to after their vision fades. And not only does this look to be incredibly touching, but I think it's going to introduce us to visual memories of our own that are just absolutely breathtaking. So they are my up next picks this week, both on YouTube and in the Apple TV app.
Yeah, these are great picks. This Blink sounds especially touching. So yeah, that's a great one to add to your list and look out for. You mentioned during the TV app highlights segment a film called Carry On coming to Netflix. That's going to be my up next pick this week because I saw the trailer for this one and I was immediately hooked, and I knew that this had to go on my list and that I really needed to recommend it to our listeners as well. If you liked Hijack, this is definitely for you because this film stars Taron Egerton as a TSA agent who is working his job at the airport. His girlfriend, played by Sophia Carson, also works at the airport. He takes his job seriously. He's checking the bags. He's trying to do a good job when all of a sudden he gets this earbud that he is commanded to put in his ear. And when he does, on the other line is none other than a character played by Jason Bateman, who is very menacing. This is not at all the type of role that you'd expect Jason Bateman to be playing, but it's a really cool character that he's playing here too, like just to see him crossing the paths here. And basically, he is giving this TSA agent commands, telling him what to do and, letting people through security with, things that they're not supposed to have. And Taron Egerton's character tries to defy this guy and immediately learns that there are dire consequences if he does not obey commands. And so it's a very interesting premise. They're trapped in this airport. He's put in this very precarious situation, not dissimilar again to what we saw in Hijack. But there's also just this element of mystery around Taron Egerton's character because it seems like he might have some kind of hand-to-hand combat or some kind of weapons training or something that he's going to need to use here, taking on Jason Bateman's character. So a lot that I don't know about this movie, but the premise sounds fascinating and the cast also just sounds really interesting. So this one's on Netflix on Friday.
Yeah, I saw the trailer and I was like, oh, I cannot wait for this. It looks amazing. And as a fan of, films like Red Eye, like Phone Booth, and I love Jason Bateman and his comedy output, like Game Night. I actually got a little bit of a Game Night vibe from this at one point. But then I remember Jason Bateman and his dark turn in Ozark, which is another Netflix series. And I am especially looking forward to his performance in this. So yeah, looks like a wild ride. A great pick, Devon. And we've got a lot to watch. And so do our listeners. And for that reason, we are going to come back to you with episode 150 slightly later next week, at the end of next week, as opposed to our normal Wednesday drop. And that also means that you get a little bit of extra time to get in touch and send your questions to us for episode 150. You can do so by sending your questions to magic@macstories.net via email, or by using the hashtag on social media, #magic150. We'll be reminding you over the course of the week on social media as well. But yeah, really, really looking forward to next week's episode and our final episode of 2024.
And what a year it's been. We look forward to closing out the year on the show next week with all of our listeners who we love so dearly. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any feedback you want to share with us about the show, we'd love to hear it. You can send it to us at that email address that Sigmund mentioned, magic@macstories.net, or you can contact us on social media via the links in the show notes. We'll be back next week with our 150th episode Q&A and some Christmas surprises. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and have a great week.